This is how to turn the audio from your SM7B from boring old this to amazing this. Stay tuned. It's easier than you think. There is a lot of disinformation out there about the SM7B, much like this post from Quinn Nelson from Snazzy Labs. He said, "I want the Shure SM7B to die." And then he followed up this tweet with a response to a comment asking which mic to use instead. And he said, quote, "Any microphone that doesn't sound like you're talking through a 7-inch piece of foam. It's a good microphone for horns, and that's pretty much it. Horrible for vocals." Now, this is a statement from a well-respected tech reviewer, though it wouldn't be the first time that a computer tech reviewer got audio wrong. Oh, Jay. But this is Snazzy Labs. Just look at that dude's beard. If you can't trust him, who can you trust? Okay, then. Let's clear the air for Quinn and find out how to truly unravel the magic that is this microphone and figure out how it gained legendary status. By the way, for the sake of this video, it's plugged into a Scarlett 2i2 3rd gen. The gain is literally at 5 o'clock. A lot of people might pick this microphone up thinking it's going to sound amazing right out of the box. I mean, you have seen all your favorite creators using it, and it sounds amazing, right? You hook it up and it just sounds like, distant and kind of, well, flat. That's because, well, it's flat. I mean, this is the frequency response here. And yeah, that is pretty flat for the most part. And that is intentional, believe it or not, because there's nothing that a creator of art loves more than a blank canvas. And this microphone is just that. Just in mic form, because, you know, it's not a canvas and you don't paint with it. This analogy's hurting my head. So then what, pray tell, can you do to take this mic from this flat, boring sound to something that pops? Well, that requires processing. One is inline hardware between your mic and the interface, and the other is in post, basically after you've already recorded. Now, for the sake of this video, we're only looking at post-production, but if you want to see how to do this with outbound effects, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button. That video is on the way. We are going to start small here because there are a ton of ways you can approach the post-processing with this microphone. But for the sake of all the Quinns out there, let's not muddy the water too much. There are two main things to treat your audio with to get it a bit punchier. You need EQ and compression. Also, I should mention I'm using Adobe Audition and only the stock plugins for this. Now, if you're worried, all of this transfers over to other plugins as all the settings are very easy to transfer. Just copy down my settings, paste them into your own plugins in your DAW, and you're good to go. Now, it's at this point that I'm going to simplify it even more. Learning how to EQ takes time and doing it over and over and over again. Also, I can't tell you how to EQ your own personal voice. I can only give you a start, and you can expand on what you learn here. So because of that, we're going to open up the parametric EQ in Audition, and then we're going to select the preset for Vocal Enhancer. You will notice a few things down at the bottom. You have 7 different settings you can play with, but we will only be using the 5 selected. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, I encourage you to play around with the settings to see how they make your voice sound when you just move them around. But remember, while you're doing it, it's always wise to constantly check in with what the before was and listen to the after. It can be really easy to overdo EQ, and if you aren't cleansing your palette, so to speak, you can end up with something really out there. So once in a while, just check in on your progress, just by hitting this button here. So let's go in and do a bit of playing. For me, I'm not too concerned with the roll-off or the boost in the lows. That's fine. That dip at 3, though, could be a bit more defined, and that's where this Q slider comes in. Now, there are a lot of producers that will tell you to just cue it up and just go searching for those frequencies here. But it can really be hard to hear the differences when you're just starting out. But give it a try anyways. Play around. It's super easy to reset this and start over. Now you can move up to the 5 and 6 setting and set this accordingly. The SM7B does like a bit of a boost in the airy frequencies, but be careful you aren't boosting too much in the highs lower than 10K. That can make some of your S sounds sound rather shrill. Again, remember to cycle back from the original audio a few times just to hear those differences you're making. Once you're satisfied, we can move on. But first, let's listen to my final product, and you can use my settings if you like. Just pause and write them down. Remember to cycle back from the original audio a few times just to hear those differences you're making. Remember to cycle back from the original audio a few times just to hear those differences you're making. Once again, you should be playing around with this. The more you're exposed to the frequencies and how they change, the more your ear will be trained and the easier this becomes. Also, remember that each voice in each microphone will react differently to the same EQ profile. So don't be shocked if it sounds great on the SM7B but sounds horrible on the Heil PR40. And now this is where it can get tricky for some. And I'm not going to over-describe how a compressor works on your audio. If you need that, I did do a video a while back. I'll post it up here. It can use some extra views. It died. Let me just say that. Now, like the EQ, we're going to be using a preset, though we're going to be making some hard-line changes. You can mess around with the EQ all you like, but just be wary. You can really make unlistenable audio with compression. So small changes tend to be better than large sweeping changes when it comes to compression. Now for this, we're using the tube modeled compressor, and we're going to start with the voiceover preset. Now again, I should point out that video where I talk about what all this means, but I'm going to just skim it a bit, okay? The threshold is where the compressor kicks in. So if it was going to keep it where it's at, this would only impact audio that crosses the neg 16 dB threshold. Now, really, we are just impacting our peaks here, so we can do that pretty easily with this setup. So we're going to set our threshold to control just some of the peaks. The output gain can be zeroed out. We can do that ourselves. And the ratio I find is a tad high. We're going to run that at 4:1. And attack and release are fine where they are. And here's what you get when you do that. Now, really, we are just impacting our peaks here, so we can do that pretty easily with this setup. So the basic principle here is the way you're getting headroom for your audio, so you can boost it. Now, with those uncontrolled peaks, you end up not being able to gain it up as much in post. But with a touch of compression, you just have that much more headroom to be able to gain up. And in conjunction with the EQ, let's take a look at the full before and after. This is the SM7B stock. Going through the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, gain set to about 5 o'clock, and this is what it sounds like. And this is the SM7B with both the EQ and the compression going. The gain is still set at 5 o'clock in the Focusrite 2i2. And yeah, this is just with all the post-production done. What do you think, Quinn? 7 inches of foam? Quinn? Now, of course, I was telling you all this based on the idea of you having completely clean audio coming in. And for some, that might not be the reality. Of course, I've said it a few times, I'm using the Scarlett 2i2 3rd Gen. It is a decent preamp. It doesn't have a ton of noise. You may need to do some noise reduction before all this, and for that, you may need to look into some decent software options. There really isn't much on Audition that is great at it, and though pricey, I use iZotope RX for it. Now, that's a whole different video. I'm not going to get into it, but you might want to consider your preamp at this point if you're using an SM7B, because the two of them do have to work together in tandem. But what did you think? Did it sound as Quinn from Snazzy Labs puts it? Sounds like you're talking through a 7-inch thick piece of foam? Probably not. Though I do want to know what your thoughts are. Let me know down below. And if you're really confused about some of the terms we were using here today, try this video. It might help out a lot.